Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here with Joe. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Perch. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have the great pleasure to talk to Jessica Petelle and Alyson Shelton, and they're responsible for a really cool book called Reburn. How are you both doing today?
I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're on the eve of our second Kickstarter, so we've been communicating a lot and pulling a lot of long hours getting ready for our issue 2 launch on July 14th.
Perfect. I've read your first book. I want to talk to you a little bit about that and the campaign and everything else. But I mean, the really exciting part, a lot of people are excited to get into comics. I think in the last couple of years, their eyes have really been opened up to the fact that they don't have to just try and get a job at Marvel and DC. There are other routes. And so I wanted to ask you about how your journey, I mean, it's cheating a little bit. I want to talk about your process packet, which came in your first Kickstarter, which is incredible. I like that. Don't take this the wrong way. I like that more than the comic in many ways because I love seeing the process. I love that stuff. But tell me a little bit about how you got here.
Well, it was our friendship is a big part of how we got here. Jess and I have known each other for a long time. One of our first jobs we had together, and I have an MFA from USC Film School, and I was writing screenplays, and Jess read one that has one of the characters from this world in it and was always really interested in it. And then I revisited this world more recently and showed it to Jess because I show her things, and I think she can take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We were assistants together at our first job at like a studio, and it was a kind of a tough job. So we spent a lot of time doing creative things, and one of the creative things that came up was the script that Alyson mentioned. And it's one of those things, like, I've worked in the industry now for, the film and television industry for a really long time, and there aren't many scripts that you just remember the visuals from, and you remember, just the feeling you had when you read it. And this particular script that Alyson wrote was like that. And so when she did bring it back to me, I happened to have been working at that time on the television series V-Wars for Netflix. And I had been delving in. I had met Kari Andrews and was picking his brain and just really getting super interested and jazzed again about comics over the years. And, I really just kind of said to Alyson, this script is amazing. I still love where you're going with this. Have you ever thought about making this into a comic? And kind of unbeknownst to me, she pulls her Zoom camera to the side and there's just this wall of comics, and Alyson and her husband Cody are both huge comic fans. And so that was really that aha moment where we said, we've got to explore this. So I went off to be okay, I now have some connections in this industry. Let me find out a little bit about how we actually go about doing this. And that was really how it started about a year and a half ago now. And we really just towed in, one thing at a time. And that was really the genesis.
And Alyson, when you wrote this script that was shown, and you talked about it a little bit in your introduction, I mean, the original idea was for a show or a movie, right? That's kind of what you envisioned. But did you find that moving it to comics, you talk a little bit about it, did it unlock more or restrict you, or
Definitely.
What'd you find?
It definitely opens up the world so much more. I mean, we joke about, you don't have to worry about how much anything costs, which is a real freeing thing. You can just write whatever you want because the artist can draw it. And also, I'm not as concerned with traditional screenplay structure and focusing really on the main character, which is I like writing ensemble pieces. I am interested in the whole world and all the people in it, and comic books certainly play to that, right? I love a book like Saga because of how enormous the world is, and because I care about all of them. And I think when you open up a world the way you can with a comic book, it doesn't feel as predictable because there are so many options, where with a movie, you kind of know what's going to happen, right? If you've seen enough movies, I mean, the hero is going to prevail. You might not know the exact details, but you know. And I think with comics, the hero doesn't always prevail. And you aren't even sure necessarily who the hero is sometimes. So I just think I really enjoy that, that in-between place that comics can exist, that I think is less common in film. I think it can exist more in TV because you have more time and space, but in film, I mean, there's only so much time you have, so you have to be pretty on point.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think that's one of the things. It's like, for me as a producer, like, I've developed a lot of screenplays. Not many of them have gotten produced. But I think one of the things that, as I'm also directing now, which has been really great over the last few years, is the visuals of it, and having the ability to really, get in there and create the world that we wanted to create. And I really have to credit Kari for giving me a lot of advice and really like being a bit of a mentor for this process. And one of the best things that Kari said to me, and I literally have it burned in my brain as we work on the series, is like, don't bullshit comic fans. Like, if you're here, you better be here. And if something happens later down the line, then great, but don't come in here and think that you're going to make something and flip it into IP. And I don't think that's what Alyson and I intended, but I think that because it was coming off of being a feature film script, it certainly was something that we had to sit with and really talk about a lot as we were developing the script and the arc, and how we wanted to do it and where we wanted to take it, if we wanted to go traditional or if we wanted to go independent. And I think ultimately that's what swayed us. Well, that and COVID,
Sure.
having, us being at home, being like, well, let's do something creative. We said, like, let's just go for this and let's put it on Kickstarter and let's see if anybody shows up for it. And we were, pleasantly surprised by the outcome.
That's excellent. I mean, the project itself, this world you created, it's a big world. I mean, it feels like an HBO type series, a Game of Thrones type immersive, big immersive world. The world that you create is a lot bigger than the first comic. I mean, the first comic is just you're barely even getting a sense of everything you can do. Do you have a sense of how? I mean, obviously success will kind of dictate it to some extent, but how far do you want this to go? What's the full package look like when all is said and done?
I think it can be as big as we want it to be. Like, I don't see, for me, there's not like we're going to do 8 issues. What is so fun about the comics and having it be indie and having it be ours is that we get to make these kinds of decisions. Oh, we like this character, so we can do a comic of this character. We can spin this character off into this, and there are enough separate, discrete, like, worlds within the world of Reburn that there is the potential to do different books with different vibes, completely different. Like, you can do a Western, you can do you could do a horror thing, you could do whatever you wanted, and we get to choose. And I think both Jess and I are really energized by that, and that you get to sort of go based on what has momentum too. You get to respond to that. I think it is I think part of the reason fans are responding to indie comics the way they are is because they feel like they're more part of it. Yes. Like, this isn't some predetermined space. Like, when Spider-Man is bad, it's a thing. Like, we're going to do this alternate universe where Spider-Man's bad, and we all know he's going to get good again. And but this, like, if certain things are tracking and people are enjoying them, well, we can lean into that. We can make those choices, and that's a lot of freedom and also energy and excitement. Like, it is really thrilling when people respond to something.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's I really am enjoying that facet of it a lot. Like, oh, people are into this. Let's do this. We can.
Yeah. No, I think again, something that comes clear from this, and maybe I think people should pick up the book first of all. Well, actually, let's get this out of the way. So, if people want to get the first issue, you ran the campaign. How do they get the first issue now if they want it?
Well, on the campaign that's launching July 14th, there is a catch-up.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how you catch up. You can get it through that way. It is a story that really felt like you you did all the homework up front. You did it kind of inverse. You did the homework up front of a really big world, and you pared it down to tell the story you wanted to tell for the first book, as opposed to a lot of Kickstarters and indie comics. They kind of start very small and then go up from there. And that to kind of what you were just saying, I think that will serve you really well as you do more books and more things and bring in more parts to this universe. You built the playground already to play in. You certainly change it, but you built that part up front, which is pretty impressive.
Thank you.
I think tell me about this process packet that you did, because I just so to kind of explain to people a little bit. It's first of all, it's long. It's like 120 pages.
We're very proud of it, Perch. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I was not in any way hurt that you enjoyed it. Because we're really proud of it. I think it's a great primer for people who want to make an indie comic, which was our goal.
No, it is. I mean, so the funny thing about it, you read it, and if you're struggling with how to kind of get something off the ground and put all the pieces together and hire the different talent you want for the different pieces, this is a blueprint for how you do it. It could be a better training manual in many ways. And you're very honest about your thought process through the whole thing. Like you put everything out there for how exactly you made this comic. I'm very, very jealous. That's excellent. I mean, you showed all your work. That's really that's very unique. Why'd you do it?
Go ahead.
I'll start. It was really interesting. I guess the one thing we should say too is we had an incredible team, working with us, and that really came up, as we just really got immersed ourselves in the indie comic space. Alyson did the art for the first issue. We have Joe McGill, who did our letters. We have Molly Mendoza, who did a variant cover for us. We have Ruth Alano, who's a sensitivity reader and also did some additional color. And, this team just kind of built, literally, like I had said before, we didn't really know exactly how to go about this, but we learned as we went along. And, we got different scripts and figured out what would be the best style for Alyson's writing. And then we kind of edited that way. And, I think that with the process packet, we were getting so many people like, you're making a comic? How does that work? How do you do that? And we were inspired by other process packets that we saw, but I think we were so geeked out, literally every time an email would come in, or we would do bi-weekly Zoom calls with our artists, and we'd do a show and tell, and then it would end up being 4 hours long, because then we just talk, and catch up. And we realized we were just building this family, and, we made kind of a conscious effort to make this an all-female team, because that was where our storytelling was. And so the fact that we were able to do that and hold this space, I think we wanted to share that. It is something we're really proud about, and we really want to continue forward, making this world for a long time to come. So we really hope people get engaged, in that process, as well as, the end result.
Yeah, I think it helps. I think if you did, in addition to kind of just showing people, which is very generous, how to kind of make a comic for people who are new to it, you walk through the steps. It's smart, because you have this huge world. You're only going to show a tiny sliver of it, really, in the first issue. You're going to tell a complete story, but it's really, in the grand scheme of things, it's tiny compared to this whole world. When you read your process packet, it dawns on the reader that there is this bigger world behind it. It gets you excited about the other potential of what you're going to do and where it's going to go. And I think without that process packet, it would have I think you would have been left with more questions, like, will there be a second issue? Reading this, you're positive there will be a second issue, and there will be more, so you feel more comfortable buying in. And I think that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in with how did you get connected with Alyson and Jomet? I work with Jomet on Beckstar. She's my letterer on that book.
Isn't she great?
Yes, absolutely.
She literally just sent an email with pages. They came in, and I was like, oh, my eyes lit up. We got connected to Alyson really by we just kind of started cold emailing artists that we liked.
Yeah.
And we really loved Elise's work, and she responded to the material. She was literally, I think, one of the very first people that we reached out to, like, hey, like, and I think it's different, and we're coming from film and television. It was this thing of like looking at people's websites and like, oh, there's an email, like we can actually like gauge their interest without talking to their managers and agents and, going through that process. And, we really, so that's really how that happened. And I think with Joe and Matt, it was like, we started to get to know people and people started making recommendations.
Well, I reached out to Steve Liebert, actually.
Yes.
Because Elise was in the lab there. I'm not coming up with it, in Portland, but Stephen.
Helioscope.
Yeah,
Yes.
She and Ruth were in that. And we were trying to find a letterer, and she was like, well, you could just, I guess, email Steve. And I'm a big fan of Steve, so that was like, and actually my husband and son met him at the con here before everything shut down. And so I had a signed book, and I was like, hey, Steve, here's Jimmy Olsen. And do you have any thoughts on letterers? So he wrote me back, and I was just, like Jess was saying, there's something really surreal about that. After being in film and television, that I could just email Steve and that he would just write me back. And in very like prompt, speedy fashion, not like 2 weeks, 3 weeks
That's
later.
awesome.
Like, it was just like, oh, this
Was
is very
there
cool.
any sort of feedback from Elise or Jomette as you were from the script, sort of being like, oh, well, like this, I'm not quite getting this, because you were coming at it from more of a film point of view, or that they were, they might have been asking different questions, that this being like a first comics project, that you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You're asking about, what time of day it's supposed to be and the lighting or stuff. I wasn't even aware or anything like that.
Yeah, I think we definitely had, we had a lot of feedback from everybody. I mean, I think one of the things Alyson and I really felt strongly about is we wanted to make sure we had the script in a place that we felt super confident with where it was, and that we could answer the questions that came out. And then when we did get into it with Elise and with Joe and Matt, we like anything, like any good creative process, they brought so much of their, personal talent into it, because they saw the vision, they saw the roadmap. We shared with them kind of like what we felt like the arc would be, because we feel very strongly we want to have these relationships with them very long term, and that this is a team. So absolutely, like they were, instrumental in bringing, their personal skills into the book, and we were very happy to have their input.
Yeah. I mean, especially during COVID, I think it was such an isolating time, and to have that creative collaboration for me was a real lifesaver. It was be able to sit and talk about character and what we're going to do, and to have these ideas. I mean, it's like every time Elise would send pages, I mean, I would almost cry. It was just really, there's something, I think any writer or creative probably can speak to this feeling of, you write a lot, and like a lot of the writing, nothing happens. It lives on your hard drive or in your friend's mind. To have these things come to life in this way, and in such a beautiful, like, it's like, I can't really articulate it, but it was just like, it was really like life-giving, to be honest, because
Sure.
COVID was not. So it was just like, it couldn't have come at a better time. And I'm so grateful for everyone who's involved in the project.
And you mentioned you had and I know you mentioned this on the Kickstarter as well. You had an all-female team on the book, which is, I want to say unusual. Maybe it's not that unusual. I know that there are some indie books that kind of create that way, but it sounds like it was as much about creating a group of friends who could really kind of create together as much as anything. I mean, it sounds like you had a very, very tight bond as a team, and you put it together yourself. It wasn't a company kind of doing this for, what's the kind of, I'm basically saying it wasn't a marketing stunt. It wasn't
Right.
a promotion. It was that you wanted this team and you wanted this kind of relationship, and the result was a good book.
Yeah, it's definitely not a marketing stunt. I mean, I know what you're sort of,
I'm articulating it very bad.
Yeah, I mean, but I agree. And I think, we talked a lot about how the main character is a woman, and this is strongly centered in the female gaze, and who better to do that than a group of women? It's like, and there is shorthand there. And I mean, I've collaborated with a lot of men, and it's not like I can't and wouldn't, but it's just, it was,
it fits the project.
It does. It suits the project, and I think it strengthens it. It makes it more solidly what it is. And that's what you hope with any creative collaboration, that you make each other better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think you said it right. It wasn't we see this happen sometimes from comic books, is that they'll assemble what looks like a press release team. And it's intended for the press release. And you then later kind of find out that team didn't even really talk to each other. It was all just kind of for optics. But here, it was a group of friends collaborating together, working through COVID, sharing ideas. And like you mentioned, it fits the content. It feels natural. And I think you do get a stronger experience. The book does feel very strong. It's just very natural in the story you're trying to tell, even though it's complete dystopian sci-fi. I mean, you're in a completely different world. Sure. But no, I think that's important, because there's a lot of questions these days about authenticity, and this book does feel very authentic, particularly with your process packet here.
Yeah. I'd also love to ask you, Jess, while we have you here, a lot of people, especially in indie comics, and in major comics, don't quite know what an editor does exactly on a book like this, and you produced and edited it. So what exactly do those tasks entail, so people doing this can kind of understand what that means?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I mean, it was really interesting. Like, I definitely wouldn't say that I was like super clear on what my role would be from the jump, but what I found my role to be was, to spearhead and keep everything on track. And, as we were paring down the script, and you're absolutely right, this is a big world, and we wanted, we knew we had a small, 24 pages to tell a story to hook people in. And so it was really like spending time with Alyson initially, trying to figure out like what was that story going to be, and talking a lot about that. And as we started to get further into the process, like, how the visuals were matching, the script, and how we could make that stronger. And I think kind of my background in like as a director and in that medium, like, definitely helped me kind of think a little bit. I mean, I think I'd be out on walks, and I'd be voice memoing Alyson, like, I was thinking about this, and what about this, and some things she implemented, and some things we talked through, and she had a much better idea for. So I think that was really important. And then a lot of the producerial stuff is we're also publishers now. I think that dawned on Alyson and I the day that all of the books arrived at her house, and it was the very first time that we had been together the entire time we were creating this book. Was I happened to be in LA and went over to see Alyson, and we were like, wouldn't it be crazy if the books arrived? And they did, like, and it was like just crying, and we were crazy, because like, I think part of what I saw was that process of saying, like, this is an idea, how do we make this a reality, then actually starting to implement that, cold emailing artists, like trying to make the deals. Like, we were doing all that. I was doing a lot of that, like in my pajamas, like at all hours of the day and night during COVID. And, you just make your way. Like, I think that was the thing I learned. And I had some really good mentors that I was able to call upon. And, I still very much feel like I'm learning, and I'm having so much fun. Like, this has been such an incredible process, but it's a lot of work. And running a Kickstarter and producing a Kickstarter, my assistant, Mo Atlas, actually came in and became like our Kickstarter support, because we realized running a Kickstarter is its own production. Oh, sure. And we also made the commitment, and this is something that I really felt strongly about, is I wanted the book done before we start the Kickstarter, because I want to have the product. And I want people to know that they're going to get the product. I've been involved in Kickstarters where it's like a year later and we're still waiting, or like I was actually looking back on my Kickstarter thing and realized I hadn't received some of the things that I had backed a few years ago. And, that's part of the platform, but I don't want to be that person. Like, I want people to trust our creative. I want them to be able to know they're going to get good product. And so we just, everything we could do to constantly be doing that. And we were working on issue 2 while we were working on the Kickstarter for issue 1 in fulfillment. So, that is wrapping up right now as we get ready to start our next Kickstarter.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you brought up the books getting delivered and all that. I think the number one thing a lot of other self-publishers or people who run Kickstarters or try to figure out is where to get books printed. What kind of experience was that for you both in looking around, shopping for the best deal or the deal that's going to work the best for you and your project, and how'd that all come together?
Well, we spent a lot of time looking at different print companies and getting samples. And, I think because, and I really leaned on Cody and Alyson on this part too, just because I know that I wanted to make sure when people got it, they received it and they felt like this is a comic that that is at the standard, of what I expect as, a collector or as somebody who is a fan. And so we really worked hard, to find a company. We ended up working with Print Ninja, and they did great for us. And, their editor there was really great, making sure that we had everything in place. And, I think just like any indie book, or maybe a lot of books, I think our book got bounced back 6 times before we finally with different little nitpicking things. And, but we were happy that was happening because it meant somebody was actually looking at it on that end and printing them. So that was a really big thing for us. And we were really happy with them and plan to use them again for this campaign.
Great.
Well, excellent. Alyson, in terms of putting these characters to the mix, this book focuses heavily on May. That's kind of gross. But what and it really struck me again as I read through it a second time and then looked at the process package. The character Hope, who is, you get the sense, especially when you read the process package, this is a major figure in the whole world. And it's striking. There's really one page of this character in your first comic. That you just get and really you're getting kind of a hologram of this character. You're not seeing much of it. I think it's pretty bold. You have this major, I don't know, antagonist is the right word, but you have this major character, and we, it teases so much for the future. Tell me how you made that decision about how to use these characters.
That's a big question. Well, I think COVID was having that time to really mull what piece of the story, where we wanted to start. We did have a pitch. We did the first 4 pages, not including the hologram with Hope, but starting with the double page spread, and then until she's on the beach. And then when we went back to this, when Jess was like, hey, let's do the whole book, we don't have anything else to do. It's COVID. I started thinking about, and also, it's me, so I'm going to go to the political place. George Floyd was murdered, Black Lives Matter, all these things are happening, and it's like, okay, I don't want to spend a lot of time in the trauma. We all know what's happened to this woman. We don't need to spend time here. What I want to see is what happens next.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be about that, because that's not the story I'm telling. The story I'm telling is how do people move forward after this stuff? And also where's the action and the excitement? I want to see her burn it down. She's got these powers. Let's see it. And I think most comic readers are pretty savvy about nemesis and what's going down. And so I don't need to spend a lot of my time and your time explaining the details of this. Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it in the future books. You'll get it, especially as we spin things off. You'll get different pieces of that. And I think for me, comics are the most effective when the writer and artist give you just enough that you they have it. They know, they have it in their mind and they have you in their hands, but they're not going to spoon feed you because we don't need to be spoon fed, And so I think that's the balance you're trying to strike, right? You don't want it to just seem like it's just willy nilly, yeah, I'm going to do some stuff and hopefully this will turn out. You want to know that they know what they're doing. So hopefully you feel that way, that we know what we're doing and that, you'll learn more. It'll be fun.
You did a great, I'm glad to hear you say, I guarantee a lot of people like that, what you just said, because that is one of the problems is comics at times, there's this temptation to get bogged down in things that the reader knows. One of the cool things about comics, unlike maybe other mediums, you have the panel, you have the writing, you have the art, you put it together right, there's a lot of shorthand for the experiences going on. You don't need to spend 10 pages drilling it all in. The reader's there. And you can get to kind of doing things. A lot of comics, I think, stumble
definitely
in this area. They get bogged down in these pieces and they almost shortchange themselves for the payoff. And like you said, a lot of people are waiting for that payoff. And so I that was a great decision.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you're talking about sort of being inspired by, the headlines, current events, and things like that. And I think we've all seen examples, whether it's in comics or, TV or film, that handle it expertly. And then we've seen, examples where it's, it's clunky or it's not quite working. So what are some examples that would have inspired either of you in making this that it did succeed, where, whether it's a movie you like or a show or, documentary, anything that, kind of informs how you tell stories like this?
I'm a super big Brian K. Vaughan fan.
Okay.
So, I will just say that straight up. Why Last Man is the first comic I ever really got into, and it was the first comic that I felt this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not having to sort of find pieces of this that are of interest for me. This whole thing is of interest for me. It's not only the world he created, but his tone. He's a brilliant writer, and I'm so excited for the TV show. Mm-hmm. And I think he's very political. Mm-hmm. But he's not it's not my goal is not to make a comic book that feels like it's Law and Order. Where it's ripped from the headlines, I'm not trying to do that. It's just I think it's being sensitive to the fact that, I'm a white woman. I'm telling a story about all sorts of people. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in any of their lives. What I'm an expert in is this world. That's what I'm an expert in. But, I'm not going to try to tell the story of a Black woman and her experiences. That's not what I'm doing. So, because I know that that's not my expertise. So, but at the same time, it's important to create a full world full of all different sorts of people. And so that's what we're doing. And I think I'm just inspired by when people talk about stuff that's hard in a way that is also accessible and entertaining, because I don't want to just feel like shit after, sorry, I don't know if I can say that. I don't want to just feel like garbage about myself after I read something. I want to feel oh yeah, this gave me something to think about, but also I was entertained. And that, it's not easy to do that, but that's definitely the goal, is that, and that we're rooting for these people to be victorious and to move past these things and to take down structures that are pushing them down. And so that's always my goal, is for it to also to be fun, to be enjoyable, to be a ride, and for me, those are my favorite comics, though I do read a fair amount of emo comics, but I do also like things that take me someplace and surprise me and have exciting double page spreads of like she's doing in Black Widow every issue right now. There's always a double page spread where Natasha's kicking ass. That is very satisfying. So I really love Black Widow right now. Kelly Thompson's doing a great job.
You're showing, not telling. I mean, well, you're telling somebody. It is more. You have to actually show the process. It's like what you were talking about earlier. There's, we can have the characters kind of narrate or lecture to the reader. That's not terribly enjoyable. It's not really going to make you feel good about yourself, like you had a good, entertaining ride. But with this medium, you can show anything you want. And so getting to that part feels a lot more effective. And again, that looks like the strategy you went after here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we also, we were talking a lot about cults during this period, with the NXIVM documentaries coming out and, right. The Me Too movement. And I think coming out of film and television, the one interesting thing, you get told no so often. And even I think when we were making this book, initially there were a lot of skeptics. There were a lot of people that were just kind of like, we got a fair amount of oh, that's nice, pat on the head. And so I think when we had the opportunity to do this, it was just like, this is going to be what we want to make. And hopefully people will want to be a part of this and be a part of this journey. And, but if they don't, this will go down as being one of my proudest accomplishments, and I hope that translates as we continue forward. But, it's been really amazing.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people with ideas for comics, and I've given this advice to kind of other people who've started to put books together. It's like, make sure at the beginning you're doing something you enjoy, that you're going to feel good at. Whether it succeeds or fails, at least you had a great accomplishment. You took something from start to finish, and if you have that, at the very least, if things don't work out, you did something you can be proud of, as opposed to, I've got to go in there and I'm almost desperate. This has to be successful. It has to have a certain number of views, and if it doesn't have a number of views, then I failed somehow. And you always see it in the work, the stuff that kind of has that baggage attached to it. You read it, and it feels like either it's a desperation or a chore from the creator. And again, your book feels like you created a huge universe. It feels like you're straining to tell more from this universe. In the first story, there's just all these little windows. There's this panel where May is kind of getting some of her memories back. You see all these tiny little panels throughout the page of memories and other things. It's this whole, there's 50 issues here in just that one page. So I think that it comes across that way, and it's what separates it, I think, from something that was like a one and done and hope that there was more. It definitely feels like you have a plan.
Thank you. That's really gratifying to hear, Perch. And I totally 100% agree with you. Write the comic you want to read. Mm-hmm. Make the book that you would pick up, or that it doesn't exist and you would like it to exist. And then you would definitely pick it up, I think that's a great guiding principle in creative things.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things where Kickstarter is really, probably why it's been so popular, especially over COVID, and all these great titles have been coming to it and creators, is that we have this opportunity to build a fan base, and there's something about that, and I think that's why the process packet resonating is so important to us, because everyone is involved in making this book. If you back our campaign, then you are part of this team. So we owe it to you to share with you how we're doing it, because you're invested, and we want you to come back, and we want you to continue forward. And, wouldn't it be great if down the line something else comes out of it? But if what comes out of it ultimately is we finish this as a graphic novel, then that's going to be really great. And that is our intention, and that is where we will absolutely do that. And I think that, we'd love to be coming back and interviewing with you years from now and talking about when we were doing our second Kickstarter.
No, it's funny you said, so I had this thought, again, as I was looking over the process packet going through there, there's this line you mentioned, it was an all-female team. And I remember reading that and thinking at that moment, it's like, but having read all this, I feel like I'm part of the team now. It's not all people anymore. You do.
Yay!
Yeah, no,
That's awesome.
I can't stress enough because before I got connected to you, I've done videos about this, saying if you're trying to kind of set yourself apart, one of the best things you can do is kind of the behind the scenes book, how it was made. It's such a smart idea for showing the work, getting people invested. They feel like they're part of the process. They're working along with you, and by the time you get to the end of it, you don't just have a reader. You have somebody who felt like they took the journey with you, and now. I mean, it's just smart business and marketing, but it's more fun. I mean, the book got significantly more fun after I read. I mean, it was good all along, but when I read the process packet, I just enjoyed it far more because you could see every panel what you were thinking. That was, I'm at this point just beating a dead horse.
I love that you're pushing the process packet because we decided to make it a stretch goal in this campaign, Perch. So everyone who backs, who receives, will receive a process packet because we were like, well, it would be nice for everyone to receive one. Like they shouldn't have to buy in at a higher level. So you're an advertisement for coming and backing the campaign so that you can unlock stretch goals. I really enjoy doing the process packet, and this is like a side note, but I made an indie feature years ago, and we ran a blog at that time, and we created community that way. And there is something about knowing who's viewing your stuff, and also like hopefully inspiring them. Like friends of mine backed at that level because their daughters want to write a comic, and like that is very meaningful and exciting. That you can't do it unless you see it, that kind of thing. And that means a lot to me, and I love sharing the art and the process with my kids. And I think seeing that and having them be like, oh, that looks awesome. There's something like, it's very gratifying when I show them the variant cover that just came in yesterday, and they're like, whoa, it's like, and that's the kind of relationship that we want to have with our fans. We want them to feel the same way of like, oh, they read my mind. I wanted this and they did it. And that's the hope. So I think the more you share your process and honestly, you make yourself a little vulnerable in that process, people feel that and then come to you with more of that enthusiasm and vulnerability. And that's like how you build relationships.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting too, like with issue 2, Lisa's doing the inks for issue 2, but we actually brought in Hillary Jenkins to do our color, and she has just this beautiful painterly style that's going to take us as we go out from the hideaway to the plains. We have horses, we have this big, beautiful, epic, scopy world outside, and we have a different artist to pair with that, which is Hillary, and she's also done a variant cover for us, and then Molly Mendoza's back doing a variant cover, so we can continue forward with her and her incredible style. So, we're really trying to, just create that synergy with the art and with the books, and be very intentional about how we're moving forward.
I liked, just as an aside, one other thing here. The book, you were originally looking at this as the Unity was the original title. And there's a page in this packet where you have the different logos, and again, a lot of kind of art and designer people geek out over this. You've got like 15 different logos here that you've designed and everything else, and you can. But then the storytelling along with it talks about moving it to Reburn and that process. And again, I think it's something a lot of comic creators can relate to, because you're trying to put together a book, and sometimes things don't quite go the way you are. You have to have a major change, in this case, the entire title of the series, and how that all is put together. Was that, you mentioned a little bit in the thing, was that a tough choice when you felt you had to move over, or did it just come naturally? How did that occur?
I think that it was for me, it was a slow dawning to, it's like, oh, this is probably not going to be the name, because it's just too common. And then when I watched Justice League, I was super happy it wasn't called the Unity anymore. I was like, oh, that was a good serendipitous. And then like, I think the final, and I don't know if I said this in the process pack, but the final thing was like, to buy the domain name was like $1 million or whatever. Yeah. And it was just like, are we married to this?
Yeah.
Let's have something that, and as a person who writes and knows many writers, I get so frustrated by titles that I can't find. Like they've written a book and it's called Dogs, and it's like, there's a lot of things called dogs. Which dogs? So I did want to have a title that felt unique and singular, and the Unity is not that.
Yeah.
Oh, and also we realized, Jess is probably going to say this, that the world is bigger than the Unity. The Unity is this one place. And then as we started to think like, oh, we want to grow the world more than, so let's give ourselves this option of making the world as big as we want to make it. Let's not limit ourselves from the get-go.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because Kieran Gillen was just tweeting earlier today from when we were recording that kind of regrets naming his most recent comic Die because it's impossible to find.
Yeah.
Right. We got to give ourselves every advantage that we can. The other thing that Alyson said, I remember as we were going through this process, and we did, we invested in the Unity. It had been the Unity, like we were all raw. So it was kind of a big shift when we started to talk about changing it. And it didn't happen lightly. Like we definitely spent a lot of time. But one of the things I thought when we were talking about this that really resonated with me is Alyson said, I don't want to call this is because of the direction of the book, because of the powerful nature of like following May, we don't want to have the title be the name of the oppressor, essentially. It's like, let's pick a title that is, more connected to May and her journey, and so Reburn was something that came out of our group think. Like, I got to thank all of our ladies for this too. We really
Definitely.
did take this to the team and said, like, what's everybody think? Like, let's make this decision together. So we definitely used them as our sounding board as we were going through this process.
I mean, Reburn winds up being a title that sounds like it could be threatening. It sounds like it could be healing. You're not quite sure what, and in many ways from reading the book, it looks like a bit of both, that there's a lot of dynamics here. So it's a more versatile name because you could take it different directions, and the logo design looks really nice. You've created this world of characters. I'm always hesitant with these. I don't want to delve too much into the books. I want people to go buy it. So we can very easily give things away. And it's a bit of a, I don't know if this is the greatest question with this particular title, but is there a favorite character? Is a favorite kind of moment that you really enjoyed writing and seeing come to life?
From the book?
Yes.
From issue 1?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you actually mentioned it, the memories. When Alyson, we talked about it, and she asked me, like, okay, can you just give me a list of, like, things that I could put in these memories? And so I gave her, like, a big list. And when I got that page, it surpassed a real art. Like, Alyson is a real artist. She is incredibly talented, and she has so much to bring to the table, not only with her skills, but her ideation. And it surpassed any thought I could have when that, and emotionally, that's such a huge moment for May. So for me, and then I don't want to spoil, but like when someone dies, that's also very satisfying and cathartic.
Again, and if you're not reading between the lines here, this book has a significant amount of action and conflict and things getting resolved, and there's some threat and danger and suspense. I mean, you do have a lot of. It's not 22 pages of world building looking out at scenery. It is a lot. A lot goes on in this book, even within a fairly confined location. I mean, this first title is very, very confined. You mentioned the second one's going to branch out more to the world. There's a lot going on. It's a book that you have to read a couple times, I think, as well, because it starts out very much putting you on unstable ground. And so as you learn more, then you have to go back and you pick up more. And it's a good reread.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. We do really toss you in, Perch. It's like, okay, get up to speed. Go. But I love the puzzle pieces. Like, I love comics that work like a larger puzzle, and I love it when there's Easter eggs and you're like, oh yeah, they showed me that, a long time ago, and it actually means something. And that feeling, like, as a reader, you feel like, oh, I did good, So there should be moments like that in the book. That's the goal.
Well, absolutely. So the second Kickstarter is here launching on July 14th. And how long will that window be open? for people?
30 days.
30 days. All right. People have to get in on that quick. Definitely. And then, I'm assuming, obviously, do you have any kind of, I mentioned this before, so I promise I'm not just poking at it, but is there a book 3, a book 4? Has there been talk of any kind of like, are you hoping to do one of these a year? Is like, what kind of pace do you want to establish?
Well, I think we're working hard. I mean, this has become something, that we're working on a lot. And, for us, it's like, we're trying to continue to tighten the timeline, right? So we want to get this, we're working hard to get issue 3, kind of plotted and underway. And we know where we're going, for the most part with the first 4 issues. Yeah. And we're just really kind of like, as fast as we can work on this and feels good, we're planning to move. So I think, the first issue did take us, from when we decided to take the pitch and turn it into the first issue, that was March, April of last year. And then we got it out into people's hands in, February? So was it?
Digital was February. Print was April.
Yeah. So, we've been like, but now, we know what we're doing, kind of, I hope. And so we're really trying to tighten the timeline and get ourselves in a real, a way that we can continue paying it off as fast as possible for those people that are going to stick with us. Because, we want to keep doing this. We want to keep moving forward. So yeah, we're hoping, that we can just kind of be, a machine over here. Yes. And keep working hard to get it going. So that's why I think the stakes for this Kickstarter, I think for us are a bit higher, because we do want to like really kind of get ourselves into a position to get 3 and 4 going as soon as we can.
Anybody listening to this, I think, particularly who's try a crowdfunded book on your own, to get your first book out, having on your own, learning it as you go in 1 year is a lot better than most. Much better than most. So that's really really cool. And fully colored and everything. You took every process. I did appreciate the pages talking about the Maury effect and stuff like that. Something that very few people. I rarely hear it, so I was smiling there. That was excellent.
My husband reads Savage Dragon, and he's an Eric Larson fan. And Eric had just been talking about how that had happened in the Savage Dragon. So he saw that, and he was like, "That's a really cool effect," but So it was like it was a fan community coming to our rescue.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might not have think about. And I think a lot of people don't think about print as much now. They think a lot about how it's going to look digitally, but not necessarily how it's going to look printed. So it was,
and I think this time around, because we hadn't really done this before, we got print samples as well, which was like something that was really helpful for us, very tangible. And now I think we have a lot more confidence, but that makes your process a little bit longer. So now that we're feeling a lot more confident, I'm hoping that'll be tighter as well.
Well, excellent. Well, Alyson, Jessica, I really want to thank you for taking the time and talking with us today and talking about the book. I hope people go and check out the Kickstarter now. The link will be in the description, and there should be, hopefully there's something on your screen right now as you're watching this that points you to where you're supposed to go. Assuming my editing skills are up to speed, which most will say they're not. Please go check this book out. Any kind of last words, things that people should look out for the two of you?
Well, first I want to say thank you to both of you, Perch and Joe, for having us. It was a really lovely conversation. And last thoughts. I'm just so thrilled. I can't really, Jess and I text each other, this is so fun. And it really is. And we plan to have another book out from this universe in 2021, not just Reburn 2. So we are working hard, and we are going to keep putting books out. And
That's awesome.
To be honest, they're just going to keep getting better, because we're going to keep getting better at this. And I hope people will go with us on this journey, because if they're having even a tiny bit as much fun as I'm having, then it's worth it. That's worth backing the project. And I'm just like, I mean, it sounds really corny, but I'm just happy to be here working with these people.
Yeah, again, I would just really thank both of you for taking the time to be with us today. I hope people check out, but it does seem like you're having fun. Like that's
For sure.
a lot of, there's too many people in comics these days who aren't having fun. You're having fun. You should go support people and have fun. I mean, come on, this is good stuff. So
yeah, no one's getting rich, so you should definitely have fun. I mean,
Yes.
this is, you know, like you gotta enjoy yourself. You know, like this is. I mean, it's a labor of love to some extent, but it's also really joyous, and I'm happy to be doing it. And it's a gift doing it with my friend Jess. I have to say, like she undersold her producing editing a little bit. Like if there's a question, she will solve it. If there is a issue, she will figure it out. And I think, and that is the ideal editor, right? They have you. They have your back. They're going to figure it out. They're going to make this book happen. And that's what she is. And that's what an editor is somebody who is going to make it happen. And I could never have done this without her. Like, I have the ideas, I have the writing, but as any writer knows, lots of writers have lots of ideas. So you need a person who you are lucky to have a person who believes in you and the project the way that Jess believes in this project. So that is what a producer and editor does.
I think it's so exciting. I mean, and I think, what we're going to just keep going. And I think that's going to be really exciting for people who want to be involved from this point. And every dime that we make, like Alyson said, nobody's getting rich off of making these, you know, we are literally, every dime goes back into it, to making our books better, making the things that we can offer fans better. And, you know, we don't take that for granted because it's so important. There's so many Kickstarters happening regularly. Like if you've chosen to back us, then we have a responsibility to that. And so for us, I think we take that as seriously as we take our storytelling and, you know, and having that autonomy and staying independent. And so I think for that, it's like, you know, we just really are grateful to have the opportunity to share the work. So thank you for having us today.
Well, thank you. And yeah, go check out the book, fund the Kickstarter, get this stuff out. And Jessica, Alyson, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.